Hello, welcome to the APEXsewalong, and this is the first week where we're going to get everything we need organised and ready to start making our APEXcarry. We're going to cover the fabric selection, cutting out our pattern pieces, interfacing everything we need. I'll talk through the notions that you need, so the hardware and the zips and all the bits and pieces you need, and any of the tools that you might need as well to make your APEXcarry. That means we'll all be set for stage 2 next week, where we're going to make the outer bag. The following week we'll make the lining bag, and then on the last week we'll put it all together and finish our APEXcarry. So I'll show you now the version that I've made for the sewalong videos, which is the standard size. All of the steps are the same for the larger size as well as the standard. I have made the snap and loop closure for the outer pocket on one side, and I've made the simple stitch version as well, so they've both options covered. I've done the simple lining or simple closure at the top, so just a magnetic snap, and the snap and loop options on the side. The lining also has a welt zip closure, which I'll show you how to do. The simple lining, angle pocket, and a lanyard strip as well. So that'll all be covered as part of it. I will do a zip closure as well, so that all of the different options that you can use to make your APEXcarry are covered. So let's get started. Let's get started. This is stage 1. This is the first week of the sewalong, so I'm just going to talk about fabrics and interfacing, and I may as well talk about all the different tools and bits and pieces and notions that I'll be using, and give you as much information as I can, and that's it. Yeah, let's get started. So for this version of the APEXcarry that I'm going to be sewing, I'm using a heavy washed canvas for the main outer, so that's I think pattern piece A, but the main outer fabric. And then the side pockets are using a cotton twill, which is like a medium weight denim weight fabric. And then for those outer, the outer pockets, the big triangular pockets, I'm using the waxed canvas, which is really lovely and holds its shape. It's quite structurally, just holds that graphic shape really nicely. So I'm really looking forward to using that. For the lining, I will be mainly using lightweight canvas, and don't have quite enough of this, so I will be using the this lovely quilting cotton as well for the internal pockets. Interfacing. If you've read my tutorial, you have noticed that I don't like interfacing. I don't enjoy the process, but it's something we've got to do at times when we need to reinforce our fabrics a little bit more so they can do their job. So I'll just talk to you now about these few different interfacing options, some of which I use a lot, some of which I only use occasionally. But the main one that I use a lot of is Pellon SF101, which is equivalent to Veline G700. It's a lightweight woven fusible interfacing that's brilliant for just adding an extra layer of an extra bit of strength and stability without any bulk or too much heaviness to pretty much any fabric. In this pattern, the two pieces I would most likely use it would be for the main outer, if I wasn't using such a heavyweight canvas, or for the outer pockets, just to give them a little bit more structure. But in this case I won't, because the waxed canvas doesn't need it, nor does the heavy canvas. But it's definitely one that if you're using a slightly medium or lighter weight canvas or whatever fabric, you might consider using that type of interfacing. Then another alternative for that is it's a Veline product, which I think is S320, and it's a non-woven fusible interfacing that's just a little bit stiffer, a little bit more structured than the Pellon stuff. So if you just need a little bit more structure, for example, in the base of your bag, I've occasionally used 2 layers of this to make the base a good bit stiffer without adding too much bulk. An interfacing I use a lot of is lofted interfacing, quite often in the linings of a bag, to give it a bit of squishy structure, gentle structure, and I often add it to the lining so that you're not adding extra bulk and thickness to outer fabrics, which can be difficult to sew anyway. So by adding it to the lining, you get that extra bit of structure without making your life more difficult when you're sewing your outer fabrics. In this case, I will be using a lighter version of that. So this is Veline H640. This is not, but is similar to Veline H630. So H640 is about 4 or 5 mil thick, and this is about 3 mil thick. And that's what I'm going to be using to interface my main lining. Then another two ones that I don't use all that often, one is Shape Flex, which is a foam interfacing, which is, this version is not fusible, so you can add a layer of fusible Bondaweb to it if you want it to adhere to fabric, but you can also just sew it in around the edges. I haven't recommended it for this pattern at all, but it is something I use, so I wanted to show it to you. What I do use it for in this pattern is to reinforce the positions of the magnetic snap fixings. So a little square of that just helps push it against the fabric, and I find that really useful. And then this is Decoville Light, which, I don't know if you can see this, it's quite flexible, but it's much stiffer. It ends up as a much stiffer reinforcement than either of those two. And it's fusible. You see it used a lot in bag making for a lot of extra structure. So that's another option for you. So as I said, in this version, I'm not actually using much interfacing. That's how I conceived of the pattern in the first place, was it to be a lightweight bag, big bag, beach bag, all day, carrying all the stuff that I need when I head out with the kids. But over the course of testing it, over the course of seeing it being made, lots of people like it in a structured fashion. I've started to like it in a structured fashion, so the interfacing is definitely an option to go with if you want a little bit more structure to your bag. One of the reasons, I should say, that I didn't interface this is that I will be making the version with a side snap, so I want it to be able to fold in, and I don't want it to resist that folding too much, so I wanted a little bit of movement in it. Now, the next thing, let's talk about the notions, all the bits and pieces that you need to make your bag. I'll be using 2 sets of webbing for the tote straps and for the hand straps. So this is about 25 mil, which I think is about 1 inch webbing, and this is, I think, 38 mil, which is roughly 1.5 inches webbing. You can use self-made, use your canvas fabric or a heavyweight fabric to make your own straps. You can use leather, you can use narrower straps, wider straps. It's totally up to yourself. The snap and loop option calls up for 1 set of snap fixings. So an anorak snap, this is a 12 mil anorak style snap, where you have a female part and a male part, and yeah, so that's the snap fixings that I use will be using for this. And you can get them from Prim, which is a brand that does lots of different types of fixings, but I get mine usually in bulk, not bulk, semi-bulk from Zipper Zoo. Additionally, you may want to, I won't be using it in this bag, use rivets to reinforce any tops of pockets positions for a bit of extra strength and just a nice detail. You can use it to reinforce your strap locations if you like. I will be using a magnetic snap fixing for the closure at the top of my bag. You'll need those side snaps or those snaps for your side snap loop too. And then for the lanyard, a swivel hook, which I now will be including in almost every bag I make, so that I don't lose my car keys into the sea when my husband jumps into the sea in his togs with the keys in the car in the back pocket. Yeah, so I think I'll be including that in all my patterns, just so that, personally, day to day, I just love having my keys on a lanyard so I can reach into my bag and pull them out. I don't have to go searching through pockets. So those are the main notions. Zips, we haven't talked about zips. So I'll be adding the welt zip to the inside of my pocket, to my lining. For the standard size, it's a 20 centimeter zip, which is just under 8 inches. For the oversized APEXcarry, it's a 25 centimeter zip, which I think is just under 10 inches. Obviously you don't need to add that in if you don't want to. For the main zip, it's gone out of my head what length you need, but you basically need one I'll put a little note here now on the screen when I'm editing it. But you can either use a closed end zip, or you can use a continuous zip, and a number 5 zip, so it's about a 6mm teeth. 6mm wide teeth is probably better than a number 3. The welt zips are number 3s that I use, and that's ideal. So that's the zips. So now, and then universal thread. You will see me changing my bobbin thread and my main thread colours, because I really do like to use matching thread as much as I can. It's so much more forgiving in terms of your top stitching, and it gives a neater finish, and every little slip or blip in your stitching is not as noticeable at all. Okay, so that's the materials we'll be using. In terms of tools, you'll need something to cut your fabric out. A rotary cutter with a cutting mat, a good sharp fabric scissors. Honestly, this is not that sharp anymore, which breaks my heart. And little snips, which is always good. And then the tools I use all the time. A quilting ruler, I'm constantly using it. I love my little wooden ruler, Generates ruler that I got from Fabric Romance, which is just super handy little measuring tool that you have everywhere. Pattern weights, I love to use pins. I use them far more than I use clips. I much prefer I just trust them a lot more, that things aren't going to slip when I use clips, but there are times when clips are handier, especially dealing with thicker fabrics, especially when you're dealing with something that isn't going to slip and you just want to hold it gently in place as you work. So clips are handy too. You'll need, well, I don't always use a zipper foot when I'm doing the welt zips, because you're kind of away from the edge of the zip, but for the main zip, for the main closure, you might need a zipper foot, or you will need a zipper foot. And then for adding your snap fixings and for putting holes in things, you can use a hole puncher, where you can pick a hole size that works for your snaps. I actually don't like using this at all, and what I use more than anything is an awl. So instead of, and I'll show you why. Instead of, if I cut a hole, I'm going to exaggerate it here because it's on a big setting, but if I cut a hole in this fabric using this, I'm cutting through a heap of threads, right? So I'm cutting through loads and loads of threads, which is really making it a lot weaker. Now, you can absolutely, of course, use it. You can get, I think, circular spots of interfacing like this. You can reinforce them and that'll work, that's fine. But what I much prefer to do is to use an awl. So instead of cutting through a load of threads, I poke through and I push through, and it breaks very few threads. It distorts the fabric ever so slightly, but you break very few threads. On a thicker, heavier fabric, you will break some for sure. It won't move out of the way as easily, but much fewer than if you are cutting a hole with that. But then there's situations like if you're using vinyl or leather, that's perfect for. But that's my awl. You'll see me use it as I make this bag. I even use it to poke the holes for my magnetic snaps, even though they're little vertical slits. I'll still use it instead of cutting a hole. For attaching your snaps, you can get a table press. I don't have one, but a Prim hand press is really super handy if you can get one. If you buy a set of Prim snaps, you'll get a little yoke that you use and you just hit it with a hammer and that does the job. I also have a metal one that will work, that I can hit with a hammer as well, for setting the snaps and the rivets. I think that's everything. Yeah, I'll be using universal thread throughout. You can use a thicker top stitching thread for sure if you like. I have a long ruler for if I'm cutting strips of fabric to make straps, which is super handy, but not essential. I think that's it. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. So I will cut out my main fabric first. This is the pattern piece A and C. So I try where possible not to have to cut out too many pieces. I know I fail most of the time because there's always lots of pieces, but at least with these you can just fold on the lines that you're not using. So for the main outer A, I don't need this section, so we just fold it away. So just carefully follow that line, fold it down. And then when I'm doing the lining pattern piece C, I'll similarly fold that away and unfold that after that. So my main pattern piece A is this stuff. Okay, let's go. These Fix-On colours, they disappear with heat, not always perfectly, so you kind of got to be careful, but when it's in the seam allowance, no one's going to see it anyway. So I'll mark all my notches. That's one piece done. Next up, this lovely stuff. This is my waxed canvas. I'll cut these out separately rather than cutting them out individually rather than cutting them out together. So that's that one cut out. That's for when I'm going to be doing the snap loop and stopping my stitching. So that's one done. See that there? This is what I do usually when I'm working with canvas, waxed canvas. Just get it over with, crinkle it up, don't worry about it. It's lovely. Oh. Yeah. The base. Oh, there's the base done. Next, these guys, side triangles. Now, what's important about these is making sure your grain line runs the same way and that you cut out pairs and then you try and keep them. It's not such a big deal with this fabric, it'll be pretty forgiving if I get it wrong. But if you have a print or a stripe, any directional fabric, I don't think there's any notches on these to mark. Oh yeah, my centre line notches. That's one. So that one, my grain line running that way, and this one, my grain line running. That's those bits done. So I'm going to cut out the side snap strips and the snap loops, the side snap loops and the main snap strips. next I'm going to cut out the linings. I'm going to cut out the main lining out of that and the pockets out of that. So got that. Oh, I only needed one. Cut two. Oh well. So that, and I'll mark my notches now on this. What is useful is to mark these guys. Now I tend to mark it more substantially on the pocket lining, but I'll mark the 4 little dots. So I'll get a pin or a needle here, a nice fat embroidery needle. I'll make a hole, and then I'll mark a little dot. Okay, I won't mark the lines because I'll do that on the pocket lining where it's less noticeable. I nearly always do my welt pocket lining the same as the actual lining fabric because it makes it really neat, because you can hardly see if a bit sticks out, you can't see it because it's the same colour. My little pin out again. So yeah, it sits just inside there and just inside there. So that's perfect. I'm happy with that. Okay, so I think the only bit I haven't done is the little snap loop for the front. So I'm going to try this. Might be a little bit stiff, a bit too heavyweight, but we'll see. And we'll see how that goes. I'd always cut it again out of a different fabric. But I did remember that I haven't done. I haven't got the lining for this bad boy. Okay. So here we have it. All of the linings done. All of the pieces done. Exciting. Let's get going. Okay, let's talk interfacing. I'm not going to be interfacing this bag, this version, much at all, but I'll talk through what I often interface anyway. So the main thing you want to make sure is this is where the handles are going to come out of your main outer. So it's taking it along with the top facing, or taking a lot of the work of the handles. So you want that to be good and strong. In this case, I've got a layer of waxed canvas and heavy washed canvas, and together I think they're going to be fine. So I won't be interfacing any more. Similarly, the front angle pocket, the back of the main angle pockets are pretty stiff, as is the base. But what I would often use for interfacing is, for any fabric that just needs a little bit extra strength without adding too much bulk, is Pellon SF101, which is equivalent, I think, to Valine G700. I really like using good quality interfacing because it just sticks so much better, and it just does the job and you can trust it. So that's what I most prefer. Then another option is a Valine product, which is a non-woven interfacing that's just got a little bit stiffer than the SF101, which is, I think, S320. And yeah, I saw it, I think it was Christina from Spreefy Bag Making Supplies in Germany had used it on some of her pouches she'd made, and I really liked the flat structured look it gave. So I got some of that from her, which I've used a good few times. I think that's a great one for the base. If this was canvas, I'd probably interface it with this, but you can't. Well, I'm not going to try sticking waxed canvas to interfacing. I think you can maybe, but I'm not going to experiment today. So that's that. And then what I often like to do in a bag is to interface the lining with a lofted interfacing, because it gives a lovely squishiness. So that's what I'll be doing. This is, I don't know if it is actually H630, but it's very similar to it anyway. But I like using, again, the Valine product, which is just good quality stuff. So that's what I'll be cutting this out now. And that's it in terms of main interfacing. In terms of spot interfacing, there are some areas where you might want to add a bit of spot interfacing. One is where you're going to have a snap fixing in the center of your main, your top facing. What I like to do for that is, again, I don't think this actual fabric needs interfacing, but to give the snap a bit of support and to kind of hold it in against your fabric well, some sort of a lofted interfacing. So this is Styleville, which is about, looks to me like it's about 5mm thick. So when you push, it basically pushes back and it holds the snap nicely against the fabric. So it'll be in behind there and it'll hold it and pull it back, restrain it nicely. So I'll be putting that on both sides. I don't have to stick it in, it's just gonna hold it in place. I have a nice little box I keep. I don't know what I'm ever going to do in all these, but I have bits of, so that's another option, which is a bit of of paper fabric that you could use to reinforce a snap fixing, like a magnetic snap fixing where you're going to be sticking 2 holes through and clamping behind. Similarly, doubled up bit of felt is a good option too. But generally, to spot interface, I have just little bits of a little square of the Pellon SF101 or the S320, anything you need to add. Again, I won't be doing it because I'm using a heavy waxed canvas for my side snap strips and my snap strips. I don't think it's going to need any interfacing, but that's what I would do, trim it down to a little bit closer to there. Okay, we'll talk that through when we're actually doing it during the process. Okay, again, another area is which I nearly forgot, is where the snap is fixing on the front of your angle pocket. Yeah, that's another spot. Now I'll cut out this stuff. Okay. Now, where the welt pocket is here, what I will probably do is I'll just I'll play it by ear, but I'll probably just trim off the loftiness of the interfacing in that area once I've prepared the hole. I'll go through that when I'm doing it. It does make it a little bit trickier because you've got this lofted interfacing, but it tends to be fine. Do nicely. I have my iron ready over there. I am going to go and fix it on. Okay. There we are, stage 1 done. Our fabric all cut out. Any interfacing that needs to be done hopefully has been done. You've collected all of the tools and hardware, notions, zips, bits and pieces that you need to make your APEXcarry. And next week is stage 2, where we'll start working on the outer bag.